Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 6 of Invincible Iron Man L, written by Jerry Duggan. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. This issue opens with Tony Stark recovering from his fight against Fei Long, for as we have seen back in the previous issue, Fei Long formed an alliance with Orcus and created the Stark Sentinel to rain down mayhem on the mutants of Krakoa. So after a brief battle down in Texas, Stark was forced to go into hiding in New Jersey, where he now have all the time to write the story of his life. So with nothing to do, Tony makes his way to his computer and started to type his story, but the crazy part about all of this is Tony tends to remember stories not by which years they happened in, but by which armor he was wearing at the time. So with that said, we jump back into the past, where this chapter of Tony's life took place when he was wearing an armor called the Silver Centurion. And during this period in time, Tony was undergoing a training exercise with the West Coast Avengers, and during that fight, Wonder Man was a pain in the ass to fight against, as well as alongside of. And as for Hawkeye, the trick arrows he kept hidden in his gauntlets always had him on his toes, for if you leave any small opening available for Clint Barton, then that itself could spell your doom. So the best option Tony had at his disposal was taking out his arrows. And finally, Mockingbird and Tigra was a formidable 1-2 punch that could give even Iron Man a run for his money. So after Tony surrendered, the general ordered his men to shut down the mind control device he had active over the West Coast Avengers during this trail run. So as the system is shut down, the members of the West Coast Avengers were completely lost about what just happened. So as Tony helps up Tigra, the general lets it be known that they need Tony's help recovering the wayward tech that only he could recreate. Because at this moment, Tony still felt it necessary to separate himself from the Iron Man, so because of that he told the world that Iron Man was an unarmed soldier serving as his bodyguard. Now, by telling this lie, it made his life both easier and more complicated. Like in this situation, he had to fly off base just to return an hour later as himself. And if Tony was being honest, there have been times in his life when he wasn't sure if being himself meant as much as being Iron Man. So with that said, when Tony arrived on the base, we find out that General Dinger had help from Tony Stark several times in the past, mainly against Magneto, during the Project Deadbolt. Because some of Tony's early adventures are probably still classified, but it's public knowledge that Tony consulted on how to deal with extinction-level events and threats that represented technological leaps beyond our current capabilities. Like for example, Tony helped create countermeasures for Air Force One against Magneto, because he was able to crush and nullify every weapon the U.S. military had with just a thought, which at the time left the U.S. as well as Iron Man's suit at the feet of the master of magnetism. Now the main reason why he helped them was because the last thing Tony wanted was to be crushed like a soda can if they ever fought. But see, during this story, Magneto isn't the main threat that keeps the government up at night, but rather the main threat is a psychic mutant causing mayhem among their ranks. So because of that, they thought that with the help of A copy of Magneto's helmet, and B, Tony Stark's mind, they could deal with that future problem. But just as they started to take leaps forward with creating Cyblockers, the prototype was nearly stolen the day prior by someone with a genuine issue security clearance and credentials from Tony's company. For a mutant telepath brainwashed a person and made them do it, but failed. Now usually Tony would be a suspect in this situation, but luckily for him, the general worked with Howard Stark in the past, which cleared Tony from any wrongdoing. So with that said, the general real reasoning for talking to Tony was to enlist the help of Tony's Iron Man Avenger bodyguard to help him transport the device to Nick Fury. So with very few options before him, Tony agreed, and was back in a place where he was least comfortable, which was overlapping his company with the Department of Defense. But see, Tony had no choice, for the mole was embedded in his company, and used his connections as a skeleton key to attempt industrial espionage. So with great curiosity, Tony reviewed the woman's record, which was filled with a stack of personal recommendations from impeccable references. So with everything hitting a dead end, Tony considered contacting Charles or Beast for help, due to the woman being a mutant, but ultimately decided against it, because he promised the general that he would deliver the device to Colonel Fury. So with Iron Man touching down on a rooftop, several things begin to stick out like a sore thumb. The first hint that something wasn't quite right was that he wasn't landing on the SHIELD helicarrier patrolling the skies above, but rather he was meeting Fury in a shady part of Hell's Kitchen. So upon seeing Fury, Tony of course had to ask the reasoning for them meeting in this location, rather than the helicarrier, which prompted Fury to let it slip that he knew Iron Man was indeed Tony Stark, which was all he needed to hear, for at this point in the story, no one including Nick Fury had any idea who he really was. So quickly Tony activated his Psyblockers, and to his surprise, Emma Frost was standing before him. So with Emma's identity revealed, she goes on to apologize for dragging him into this, but the destruction of these devices was really important, and with the general growing suspicious, she had to use someone he trusted, which so happened to be Tony. So with her plan out there, Emma once again uses her psychic power to recruit additional help, for the meeting place she chose was located above the bar with no name, which so happens to be a bar that most villains attend, and on this day in particular, it just so happened to be filled. For out of nowhere Dr. Octavius and Stiltman blindsided our hero. So with Tony crashing into the street below, the assault was just beginning, for Rhino quickly joined the battle, and proceeded to ram him in the back. So with the odds stacked against him, Tony kept on his guard and fought back to the best of his abilities, but see, those three weren't all he had to attend with. Because on the next page, both Hydro Man and Sandman ambushed him as Electro sent an electrical shock his way. Now usually this would be too much for any one hero to deal with, but Tony was using his Silver Sentron suit, which was designed for just this. So with great skill and tech, Tony began to take out each enemy one at a time, until Dr. Octavius knocked off a chunk of his helmet, disabling his Psyblockers. So with our hero vulnerable, Emma capitalized on the opportunity and entered his mind, in an attempt to erase their whole interaction, but in a twist, Tony was already suffering from a concussion which helped him cancel out her attack. So with that said, we skip back to the current day, where War Machine has arrived at Tony's new hideout bearing gifts. For War Machine snuck into one of Stark Unlimited older warehouses and stole a few weapons for Tony. Because Stark is ready to go on the offensive and take down Phylong and the Stark Sentinel. So after today, there will be no turning back, for he will be seen as a wanted criminal. But to Tony Stark, that is a fair trade he is willing to make, for he will be damned if he lets the Sentinels come online today, for Stark Unlimited must die. So with that said, issue number 6 of Invincible Iron Man comes to an end. Now, with that said, this issue served more as a retcon on how Tony first met Emma while setting up Tony's future battle with Phylong and the Stark Sentinels. So down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.